Poor wife walks in on Millionaire proposing to Mistress. What she does next will shock you. When Maria Delgado pushed open the ornate doors to the private dining room, she was expecting a quiet evening with her millionaire husband, Jacob. Instead, she found him kneeling before another woman, an extravagant ring poised between his trembling fingers. In that split second, her world shattered like delicate porcelain dropped from a great height. Emotions warred inside her: shock, betrayal, fury. But what Maria did next defied every expectation. The consequences of that decisive moment would reverberate through high society circles, revealing secret alliances, shattered trust, and a woman's quest to carve her own destiny out of the chaos her husband had unleashed. Maria Delgado had been raised to believe in the power of love. Born in a modest suburb of Philadelphia, she'd spent her childhood studying hard, watching her parents work long hours, and learning the value of perseverance. Love, in her eyes, was meant to be honorable, a sacred promise that transcended time and adversity. So, when she married Jacob Delgado, an unassuming man at the time, who later skyrocketed to wealth, she believed their union was fated. Everything about Jacob back then spoke of ambition tempered by warmth, a thirst for success supported by a deep devotion to her. They married in their mid-20s, beginning with a modest apartment in downtown Philadelphia. While he climbed the rungs of the real estate development world, Maria supported them both by teaching music lessons to neighborhood kids. She beamed with pride each time Jacob closed a deal that brought them a step closer to his dream, building an empire. Through the nascent years of their marriage, every victory was shared. Every setback was consoled by the other. The couple felt invincible. As Jacob's fortunes grew, so did his interests, and the city seemed too small for his evolving ambitions. With the promise of even greater success, he uprooted them to New York. Over time, he transformed from the modest man Maria once knew into someone revered by the upper echelons of Manhattan's elite. He became known for orchestrating multi-million-dollar real estate ventures. Their modest apartment turned into a lavish penthouse overlooking Central Park. From dressing in simple button-down shirts to adorning himself in bespoke suits from Savile Row, Jacob thrived in the glitz and glamour of high society life. Maria was proud of him, of course. But with each acquisition, each expansion, each lavish party thrown by Manhattan's wealthy set, she began to sense something intangible slipping away. The sweet, humble spark in Jacob's eyes was being replaced by a relentless desire for more. Their shared dinners became fewer and fewer. Their conversations, once intimately about dreams and daily life, revolved around boardroom strategies and the constant hum of new deals. Where there was once closeness, an unspoken chasm was opening. Still, Maria was no stranger to sacrifice. She believed that a marriage demanded effort and understanding. She accepted that his time was consumed by meetings, power lunches with foreign investors, and charity galas where he networked. She made space for his blossoming empire and refused to let suspicion take root. If he was distant, she told herself, it was because he was tired. If his phone rang at odd hours, it was because that was how the real estate world worked. She clung to the memory of that earnest young man who held her hand in their first tiny kitchen, dreaming of a brighter future together. But all illusions can shatter. Late one evening, after one of his countless events, Jacob casually mentioned that he wanted to take her to an exclusive restaurant the next night. Belafonte's, perched high above the city with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the sparkling skyline. Maria's heart fluttered. A private dinner just for them, exactly what they needed to revive their bond. She felt a spark of hope that maybe their relationship could rekindle, that the old Jacob would re-emerge, if only for a night. The following day, she dressed with care in a flowing, emerald green gown. She recalled how green was Jacob's favorite color on her, how he'd often say her eyes looked like precious jewels when she wore it. She left their penthouse with trembling excitement, not wanting to arrive too early, but also conscious that the invitation had felt momentous, like something significant was in store. When she reached the restaurant, an attentive maitre d' greeted her by name and led her down a corridor to a discreet, gold-trimmed door. Soft piano music flowed from within. Her heart pounded, imagining a candlelit room just for the two of them. Instead, as the door swung open, she stumbled upon a scene she could never have prepared for. Jacob, down on one knee, proposing to a statuesque blonde woman, his mistress, whose face Maria recognized from hushed rumors at parties and unconfirmed gossip in tabloids. The ring in Jacob's hand sparkled like a fallen star, captured by the overhead chandelier's light. Time froze, capturing her shock, the mistress's gasp, and Jacob's horrified expression in an excruciating tableau. Maria felt dizzy, her sense of reality splintering. Memories of their simple days in Philadelphia flooded her mind. Her hands shook as she clutched the handle of the door for support. She sensed the maitre d' quickly slip away, likely to avoid the pending explosion. The look on Jacob's face rapidly morphed from romantic fervor to utter panic. How long has this been going on? Maria finally managed to choke out, voice trembling. The blonde woman, Annalise Winslow, as Maria would later learn, stepped back, her hand protectively covering the ring that Jacob had tried to slip on her finger. She had a deer-in-headlights look, as if she had expected this moment, but not in such a brutal collision of truths. "Maria," Jacob began, rising slowly from his knee, "it's not what it looks like." A pit of molten anger rose in Maria's chest. The anguish burned, pried open by betrayal. She glanced at the ring Jacob was holding. It wasn't a tiny diamond. It was a massive rock, overshadowing the modest ring she herself had worn with pride for years. Everything about this was a sickening confirmation of what she had refused to suspect. She refused to let him see her crumble, her eyes brimming with unshed tears locked onto Jacob's. "For once in your life," she said, voice trembling yet steel-edged, "tell me the truth." Jacob glanced between Maria and Annalise. Shame flickered across his expression, but only for a moment before resolve set in. In a voice that cracked, he said, "I was going to explain it after this. I never wanted you to find out this way." He was trying to speak gently, but Maria found it galling. Here, in a lavish, private dining room that cost more per meal than some people earned in a month, her husband was kneeling before another woman with an engagement ring. Her world felt false, illusions shattered like shards of broken glass. But instead of running, instead of screaming or hurling every insult she could muster, Maria inhaled. She decided then and there that she wouldn't collapse. Not now, not ever. With a composure that surprised even herself, she said, "Fine." She tugged off her wedding band, the simple gold band that had once symbolized their hopeful union. She placed it gently on the nearest table, right next to a silver platter meant for some extravagant dinner. She looked at Annalise, whose cheeks had gone pale. "Congratulations," Maria said icily. "You've caught a big fish. I hope you both choke on it." She turned on her heel, ignoring Jacob's pleas for her to wait. She walked out with her head held high, tears threatening to fall but refusing to let them out until she was out of that stifling, perfumed environment. Little did either of them know, Maria's next actions would set off a chain reaction of hidden truths, corporate betrayals, and unexpected alliances that would ultimately turn the power dynamics of their world on its head. Maria spent the night at a friend's townhouse near Gramercy Park. This friend, Jennifer Robertson, was one of the few people Maria trusted implicitly. Jennifer, a lawyer by profession, had seen far too many wealthy husbands try to con their wives out of rightful settlements. In the warmly lit living room, Maria recounted the horrifying scene. Jennifer listened quietly, her arms folded, eyes flashing indignation at Jacob's betrayal. When Maria finally finished, the tears she had held back since the restaurant began to slide down her cheeks. Jennifer promptly pulled her into a hug. "Maria," she murmured, "this is terrible, but you're not going through it alone. This time, you have to look out for yourself." Maria sniffled, still reeling. "I never thought. All those business trips, all those late nights." Jennifer tightened her grip. "People like Jacob, they think they can have everything. The wife, the mistress, the image of perfection. You don't deserve that." Maria wiped her tears. A cold anger took root in her heart, overshadowing her sorrow. She had sacrificed too much, believed in Jacob too long. Perhaps she'd been naive, but there was no time left for self-pity. "What do I do?" she asked, gazing at Jennifer. "I'm not going to just let him throw me away." Jennifer pursed her lips, then reached for her phone. "First, we need to call Patrick Hodges, one of the top divorce attorneys in New York. He'll know exactly what to do. The Delgado empire might have been built by Jacob, but you've stood beside him every step of the way. New York law won't ignore that." For hours into the night, they planned. Jennifer explained the complexities of high-asset divorces, the myriad ways spouses try to hide money. They dissected the financial empire Jacob had built, the real estate ventures, the offshore accounts rumored by some to exist, the charity foundations that he might use as tax shelters. Maria listened, took notes, and found her heartbreak morphing into a dogged determination. If Jacob thought he could so brazenly propose to another woman, he was in for a rude awakening. The next morning, Maria woke from a fitful sleep. She rose, showered, and dressed in a simple black outfit. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, her eyes rimmed with sadness, yet also lit by an undercurrent of resolve. She thought about that shocking moment in the restaurant. It had been mere hours since her life was turned inside out, yet it felt like an eternity. An unexpected wave of curiosity washed over her. What kind of woman was Annalise Winslow, beyond the honey-blonde hair and designer gown? How long had Annalise waited in the wings for Jacob to propose? Maria's mind churned with possibilities. Was she manipulated by Jacob's power, or was she the manipulator? Determined to cut through the speculation, Maria decided she wanted facts. She dialed a private investigator's number, someone recommended by Jennifer. A man named Richard Pine, known in certain circles for his thorough, discreet approach. Maria remembered meeting him briefly at a philanthropic event. He'd been introduced to her as the best man to find what's hidden. If there was dirt to be dug up, Richard Pine could unearth it. Within an hour, Maria was sitting in a small, upscale coffee shop near Union Square. Face to face with Richard, he was a sturdy man in his mid-50s, with kind but calculating eyes. "What can I do for you, Mrs. Delgado?" he asked in a measured tone, sipping his espresso. Maria inhaled slowly. "I found my husband proposing to another woman last night," she said, voice unwavering. "I need to know everything about her, her background, her motivations, any skeletons in her closet." Richard set down his cup, making the slightest grimace. "I'm sorry to hear that. Cheating spouses are, unfortunately, too common in my line of work. But let's talk specifics. What do you already know about this woman?" "Her name is Annalise Winslow. I believe she's from Los Angeles originally. She's in her mid-20s, definitely younger than me or Jacob. Rumor has it she used to be a model, or maybe a socialite. I'm not entirely sure." Richard nodded, scribbling notes. "Understood. I'll compile everything I can find. Miss Winslow's finances, connections, travel history, job history, whatever might help. And I assume you also want me to keep an eye on Jacob's dealings?" He lifted an eyebrow knowingly. "Yes," Maria replied firmly. "I have a strong feeling there's more to this than just an affair. I want to know if he's been hiding money or if he's planning to move assets out of the country. Anything that can help me get some measure of justice when we go to court, or even before that. Richard nodded again. I'll be in touch soon. Maria thanked him and left, feeling that with each step she was moving deeper into a labyrinth where she had to be the one calling the shots. She wasn't merely a scorned wife. She was becoming an orchestrator of her own destiny. By afternoon, Maria knew she could no longer avoid returning to the penthouse. She needed her clothes, her documents, her life. She braced herself for the confrontation that was inevitable. Summoning what courage she had, she took a taxi to the towering building that had once felt like a dream come true. Its gleaming marble lobby now felt foreign. She ascended in the private elevator, her heart pounding, stomach in knots. As she slid the keycard and the doors to the penthouse opened, she heard Jacob's voice carrying down the corridor. To her surprise, he wasn't alone. She recognized the female voice, Annalise. They seemed to be arguing. Maria took a moment to listen. Through the grand foyer, she could make out the two silhouettes in the living area. She heard Annalise's voice, tight with anger. You said you'd handle this differently. Now everyone's talking about it like some scandal. How do you think this makes me look? Jacob hissed back. You think I planned for Maria to walk in? God, Annalise, I'm juggling a million things. The board at Delgado Holdings is going to be furious if this leaks to the press. This was supposed to be discreet. Maria felt a twinge of savage satisfaction hearing the cracks form in their alliance. With her shoulders set, she stepped forward, letting her heels clack on the polished floor. Jacob and Annalise whirled around, identical expressions of shock distorting their features. Maria. Jacob started, lifting a hand in an entreaty, but Maria's gaze was locked onto Annalise. Up close, the mistress was undeniably striking tall, poised with carefully styled waves of golden hair. Yet Maria noticed a flicker of insecurity behind that controlled exterior. Good, she thought. I'm not the only one rattled. I just came to get my things, Maria said plainly. Then I'll leave, and you two can celebrate your engagement in peace. Annalise's shoulders relaxed, but her eyes narrowed in faint challenge. Jacob stepped forward. Maria, wait. I think we should talk. She laughed mirthlessly. Talk? That's what you wanted to do? You were going to propose to her, Jacob. Don't pretend there's any middle ground here. And honestly, what do I have to say to you? Congratulations. Jacob's jaw tightened. It's not that simple. Actually, it is, Maria snapped, her emotions flaring. You made a choice, a public choice no less. I can't undo that, and I won't be your doormat. Annalise crossed her arms, lips pressed together, as though restraining herself from retorting. Maria caught the fleeting glance she gave Jacob, some mixture of fear and entitlement. It dawned on Maria that Annalise may have feared losing the security Jacob's fortune promised. The scorned wife's presence in the penthouse complicated matters for the mistress, who presumably dreamed of living here in style. Just take whatever you need, Jacob said after a moment. We don't need to fight in front of her. Maria's chest constricted, memories of 1,000 shared moments in this home swirling in her mind. But she suppressed the pain and moved calmly to the master bedroom, which was filled with expensive furnishings and the faint scent of the cologne Jacob once gifted her. She methodically packed a suitcase with her clothes and personal items. Her fingertips lingered on a framed photo of them in front of their first store-bought Christmas tree, back in their humble Philadelphia apartment. She set it aside, not wanting to carry something so laden with nostalgia. As she re-entered the living area, she caught a glimpse of Annalise's engagement ring glinting in the afternoon light. Rage flared again, but she forced composure, reminding herself that she had a plan. Once she had everything she needed, she paused at the door, turning back to them. Jacob, she said, I've asked Patrick Hodges to represent me. If you want to avoid a scorched earth divorce, I suggest you speak to your attorney. Annalise's eyes flared at the mention of divorce. but possibly it hammered home the reality that Maria wasn't just going to vanish quietly. Jacob's face fell. He tried to speak, but words failed him. In that charged silence, Maria left. She felt hollow, but also strangely empowered. The woman who had walked in on her husband's betrayal mere hours ago was no longer the same. And what awaited her next was a labyrinth of hidden truths. Over the next week, Manhattan buzzed with rumors. The Delgado name had become a fixture of high society galas and philanthropic events. Whispers circulated through penthouse brunches, exclusive clubs, and midnight parties. Jacob Delgado had not only cheated on Maria, but had proposed to his mistress. The gossip columns ate it up. Real estate mogul's secret engagement was the headline in at least one online publication. People debated whether Maria was blindsided or complicit, whether she'd stay or go, and what the mistress was like. In the meantime, Patrick Hodges, the formidable divorce attorney, laid out a roadmap for Maria. They met in his sleek midtown office, with Jennifer present as moral support. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the hustle and bustle of Manhattan below, as though showing a world that never slept, never paused for heartbreak. "Maria," Patrick said in a calm, almost fatherly tone, "Jacob's net worth is estimated at around $700 million. We need to act fast to ensure he doesn't move assets out of reach." $700 million, Maria echoed, stunned, though she knew the figure hovered in that range. She had watched his success balloon over the years, but to hear it stated so plainly shook her. She'd never placed a dollar value on their relationship. Patrick continued, "We'll file motions to freeze a significant portion of his assets until the court rules on equitable distribution. But be ready, his legal team will fight. Also, the prenuptial agreement. We need to see if that holds up in court." Maria's brow furrowed. "We had a prenup, but it was signed before his empire expanded like this. Back then, he had almost nothing. I never thought it would come to this." Patrick flipped through documents. "Yes, it's from 15 years ago, but we have grounds to challenge it if certain conditions have changed significantly, or if you can prove undue influence or anything along those lines. After all, you supported him morally and even financially in the early years." Jennifer chimed in, "Don't forget about the potential hidden offshore accounts. Rumors are swirling that he might be moving investments to the Cayman Islands." Maria felt her insides twist. Every layer of betrayal deepened her resolve. "Let's do whatever it takes. I don't want to be cruel. I just want what's fair. But if Jacob tries to shortchange me after all I've done to help him, then I'm ready to fight." Patrick gave a firm nod. "I'll coordinate with your investigator, Richard Pine. We'll uncover any hidden income streams or suspicious accounts. In the meantime, you need to remain calm. These next few weeks will be a roller coaster." Maria exhaled. She glanced at Jennifer, who squeezed her hand. This was war, and she was prepared. Late one night, Maria's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She tapped it open and saw, "I have information about Annalise. Meet me at Calderwood Cafe, 9 am tomorrow. R.P. Richard Pine." She felt a rush of anticipation. The next morning she arrived at the cozy Calderwood Cafe, known for its artisanal pastries and discreet atmosphere. Richard sat at a corner table, leafing through a manila folder. Maria slid into the chair opposite him. "So, what have you found?" Richard leaned forward, voice low. "Quite a bit, actually. Annalise Winslow is from Los Angeles. That much is true. She started off as a pageant contestant in her teens, then moved into small-time modeling gigs, mostly promotional events. After that, she tried to break into Hollywood. She had a few minor roles, nothing significant." Maria listened intently as Richard continued. "She married briefly at 19 to a man named Parker Bloom, an older talent manager. The marriage lasted less than a year, and she walked away with a sizable alimony settlement, allegations of emotional abuse from both sides, but nothing proven. After that, she moved to New York around 3 years ago. She's been living in high-end apartments, though it's unclear how she's been affording them. So she's a gold digger, Maria muttered, disgust curling in her stomach. Richard shrugged. She's adept at finding wealthy men, that much is clear. And from phone records I accessed, it seems she was seeing Jacob for at least a year before you caught them. Maria's chest clenched. A year. She felt her hands tremble momentarily. For a year, her husband had been living a double life. Go on, she prompted, forcing composure. Her finances are shaky. She maintains appearances, but she's leveraged with credit card debt, living off gifts from older boyfriends. I also found something else, some suspicion that she was previously connected to a money laundering scheme. Though nothing concrete enough for an arrest, she's cunning. She knows how to navigate the wealthy circles and keep her secrets hidden. Maria's mind spun. She pictured Annalise draped on Jacob's arm, whispering sweet words to him while systematically securing her future with his money. This was no mere fling. This was a calculated move by an opportunist. It didn't absolve Jacob, he was equally to blame, a grown man who should have seen the red flags. But it changed how Maria viewed the dynamic. How can I use this information, she asked. Richard folded his hands. Your legal team can introduce this as evidence that Annalise might be pushing Jacob to move assets, or that she might have a questionable background that affects the case. While it doesn't directly influence your divorce settlement, it can shed light on Jacob's credibility and motives. Maria nodded slowly. Thank you, Richard. This is incredibly helpful. She closed the folder, feeling her spirits lift for a moment. This was more than just heartbreak. Now it was a mission to protect herself from two cunning players. She had let love blind her to Jacob's changes, but she would not let it blind her to her own future. While the divorce proceedings were set in motion, Jacob Delgado faced a crisis of his own. The Delgado Holdings Board of Directors had caught wind of the scandal. The reason? A major investor, Keiji Nakamura, who had planned to pour hundreds of millions into Delgado Holdings' new project, was now hesitant. The fiasco with Jacob's personal life signaled instability at the helm, and big money despises instability. A week later, in the elegant conference room at Delgado Holdings headquarters, Jacob was grilled by the board. The walls were lined with modern art, and the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. But the tension inside was palpable. Men and women in suits, representing some of the largest financial institutions, demanded answers. Board member Regina Charles, a tough-as-nails executive with silver-streaked hair, eyed Jacob coldly. We're not here to judge your personal decisions, she began, but your behavior is affecting our business. Mr. Nakamura is spooked. He stalled negotiations because he doesn't like the negative press associated with your, shall we say, public affair. Jacob attempted a confident posture. We can handle this, he said. Nakamura's concerns are about the stability of the company. I can assure you Delgado Holdings is stronger than ever. Regina's sharp gaze didn't waver. Your wife, Maria Delgado, has been a visible figure at charitable events linked to this company. She was involved, albeit unofficially, in several philanthropic partnerships. Her departure in such a scandalous way raises questions. We need to ensure no crisis of confidence escalates. Jacob felt his insides tighten. The narrative was twisting. Maria was no longer just his wife. She was an extension of the brand he had built. He stifled the desire to lash out at the board's insinuation that his personal life was fair game. Instead, he insisted, I'm working on controlling the narrative. We'll handle the press. And as for Maria, once the divorce is settled, we can present a unified, amicable front. Regina's lips formed a thin line. Jacob, we hired a PR team. They've strongly advised that we do damage control before the next shareholders' meeting. That might involve statements from both you and Maria, something to quell rumors of a messy divorce that could sabotage investor confidence. Besides, have you considered the ramifications if Miss Delgado takes you to the cleaners financially? Jacob's frustration peaked. I have attorneys for that, he snapped. We'll handle it. The rest of the board members exchanged looks. One of them, Arnold Powell, tried to lighten the tone. Look, we just need reassurance that Delgado Holdings won't implode from a personal scandal. If you can't get it under control, we might have to explore leadership changes. That was the ultimate threat, a coup at his own company. Jacob forced a smile that didn't touch his eyes. There will be no need for that. Trust me. As the meeting adjourned, Jacob was left alone for a moment. His reflection in the glossy surface of the boardroom table looked older, more stressed. He thought of Maria's eyes the last time he saw her, brimming with betrayal. Then he thought of Annalise, upset with the negative attention. For the first time, he questioned if the precarious web he'd spun was worth the cost. But it was too late. The avalanche had already begun. In a twist that neither Maria nor Jacob could have predicted, help came from an unexpected quarter, Jacob's estranged sister, Daniela Delgado. She had parted ways with the family years earlier, after disagreeing with Jacob on a major business decision that led to a bitter falling out. Since then, Daniela had built her own path, creating a successful interior design firm. She'd always admired Maria's kindness from afar and held contempt for Jacob's ruthless ambition. Out of the blue, Daniela reached out to Maria. She called one evening while Maria was reviewing documents with Jennifer. Maria, this is Daniela, Jacob's sister. Maria's initial shock shifted into curiosity. Yes, Daniela. The first remember you. We haven't spoken in ages. Look, Daniela said. I heard about what happened. I don't blame you if you don't want to talk. But I have information about a couple of major real estate deals. Jacob's been working on things that might be relevant to your divorce. If you're interested, meet me at the Silverwood Lounge tomorrow night at 8. Maria hesitated. Jacob had mentioned Daniela only rarely, and it was always laced with bitterness. Yet something told her Daniela might be sincere. I'll be there, she said, surprising even herself. The next night, Maria walked into the Silverwood Lounge, a chic bar with velvet drapes and soft jazz music. Daniela, a petite woman with sharp features, waved from a corner booth. She wore a stylish black suit and maintained a guarded expression. Thank you for meeting me, Daniela said, offering a polite nod as Maria sat down. Maria studied Jacob's sister. I'm surprised you reached out. Jacob never said good things about you. Daniela smirked. Likewise. He painted you as the obedient wife who turned a blind eye to his shadier deals. But I knew that wasn't you. We might not have been close, but I always saw your kindness. Now, about his real estate dealings. She opened her handbag and pulled out a USB drive. These are documents that point to a series of shell companies linked to Delgado Holdings. I suspect he's been funneling money offshore. Years back, he tried to get me to help launder funds through interior design contracts. I refused, and that's partly why we fell out. He threatened me to keep quiet. Maria's eyes widened. She carefully took the USB drive. If these documents were legitimate, they could be a game changer. Why help me now? Daniela's eyes flickered with something akin to regret. Because Jacob's arrogance has gone too far. He's forgotten family loyalty and moral boundaries. If he wants to destroy you, the one decent aspect of his life, I won't stand for it. And, to be transparent, I want him to face consequences for all the times he's bullied and blackmailed anyone who stood in his way. Maria tucked the USB drive into her purse. She studied Daniela carefully, trying to gauge sincerity. Thank you, she said eventually. I'll have my lawyer look at this. I appreciate your honesty. Daniela gave a single nod. Just be careful. He'll retaliate if he feels cornered. Jacob Delgado is still my brother, and I know what he's capable of. Fear nudged at Maria's heart, but it was overshadowed by her determination. She swore to herself that she wouldn't let fear rule her anymore. Jacob had shattered her trust and flaunted his betrayal in a way that threatened her entire future. She wouldn't stand idly by. While Maria gathered information, Annalise Winslow was not idle. She realized Jacob was in a precarious position. The negative press, the board's dissatisfaction, and now the looming divorce threatened to erode the luxurious future she had counted on. In whispered phone calls, she pressed Jacob to finalize their engagement, to secure her name in the Delgado fortune before it slipped away. Yet Jacob delayed, promising to fix everything first. Uncertain of Jacob's ability to protect her interests, Annalise took matters into her own hands. She arranged a private lunch with one of Jacob's longtime associates, a banker named Charles Montclair. He was known to handle offshore transactions for Delgado Holdings. At a chic bistro on the Upper East Side, she met Charles in a secluded corner. "Jacob trusts you, right?" she asked, swirling her wineglass. She wore a designer dress, exuding confidence, even though her heart pounded with nerves. Charles nodded slowly. "We've done business together for years." Annalise leaned forward, letting her voice drop to a conspiratorial whisper. "Good, because I want to guarantee that if things go south, I'm protected." Charles raised an eyebrow. "That's a tall order." Jacob keeps his financial dealings close to the vest. A sly smile tugged at Annalise's lips. "I'm sure he does. But I also know Delgado Holdings is possibly moving money in ways that aren't entirely above board. If you help me get a piece of the pie quietly, I'll make it worth your while. I have connections in L.A. that might interest you." Charles swallowed. He was no stranger to morally dubious requests, but this was bolder than most. Still, money talked. "What do you propose?" "I propose you set me up with an offshore account. A small percentage of whatever Jacob moves. I don't care if it's 1 million or 10 million, as long as I have something to fall back on. In return, I'll keep my mouth shut if the authorities come knocking." Charles looked uneasy. He glanced around to ensure no one was listening. This could be risky. "But I'll see what I can do." Annalise nodded, leaning back with a smug satisfaction. She felt a thrill at the prospect of securing her own fortune. She was tired of waiting for Jacob to deliver. If he was going to let his empire crumble, she'd salvage what she could. The divorce proceedings accelerated. Under the scrutiny of Patrick Hodges, Jacob's lawyers tried every trick in the book. They argued that the prenuptial agreement limited Maria's entitlement to a fraction of the current fortune. But Patrick introduced evidence that Maria's early support had directly facilitated Jacob's meteoric rise. Financial experts testified about intangible contributions, spousal support, and the validity of a prenup signed under potentially misleading circumstances. Behind closed doors, settlement negotiations were intense. One afternoon, in a wood-paneled conference room in the courthouse, Maria and Jacob faced each other while their lawyers sparred over details. The tension was suffocating. Jacob's lead attorney, Garrett Rhodes, glared over his wire-rimmed glasses. "My client is offering a significant settlement, $20 million. That's more than generous, given the prenuptial agreement." Maria's lawyer, Patrick, shot back. $20 million is a pittance compared to the Delgado empire. "My client deserves equitable distribution, especially in light of the new evidence we'll be presenting about hidden assets." Garrett stiffened. "What evidence?" Patrick laid out the file containing Daniela's USB drive findings, shell companies, suspicious transfers, and potential tax evasion. Maria noticed Jacob's face flush with anger. She held his gaze, refusing to back down. "If you don't want the courts delving into these matters," Patrick said calmly, "it would be wise to offer a fair settlement and quickly." Garrett looked to Jacob, who cleared his throat. "This is ridiculous," Jacob muttered. "Maria, we can handle this privately. Let's not blow up everything we built." Maria's anger flared. "We didn't build anything together anymore, Jacob. You destroyed that. I just want what I'm legally entitled to, nothing less." Before Jacob could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, features hardening. "Excuse me," he said, rising and stepping outside. Maria exchanged a look with her lawyer, who gave her a reassuring nod. She felt a pang in her chest, remembering the man she once loved. But she'd come too far to yield. Moments later, Jacob returned, face grim. "There's a situation at Delgado Holdings. I need to attend to it. We'll resume this later." He left with Garrett, leaving an uncomfortable silence behind. Patrick exhaled and turned to Maria. "He's rattled. That's good. But we need to keep the pressure on." She nodded, her mind swirling with possibilities. Jacob had always thrived under pressure, but this was a new realm of stress, public scandal, board dissatisfaction, a vengeful sister revealing his secrets, a cunning mistress, and a betrayed wife fighting back. If anyone understood the Empire's vulnerability, it was Maria, and now she had no reason to protect it. Jacob discovered what the phone call was about. Keiji Nakamura had officially withdrawn his large investment due to the ongoing negative publicity and internal instability at Delgado Holdings. The blow was catastrophic. Stocks dipped, the board was livid, rumors of a hostile takeover circulated. Jacob's once iron grip on his empire was loosening. In the days that followed, tabloids feasted on fresh gossip. Leaked whispers suggested that Jacob's mistress was demanding a rush wedding and that the Delgado board was considering a forced resignation if the crisis continued. Jacob's face, once glowing with ambition, now appeared haggard. The carefully curated facade of success was crumbling faster than he could salvage it. At Annalise's insistence, Jacob tried to offer her a lavish ceremony in some exotic locale, hoping a quick marriage might quell some rumors and secure her unwavering support. But the board frowned at any attempt that would further sensationalize his personal life. An internal power struggle erupted, with some directors pressuring Jacob to step down temporarily. Regina Charles especially had sharpened her stance, aligning with a faction that believed Delgado Holdings needed a new figurehead to reassure investors. In a desperate bid to maintain control, Jacob made a public statement. Cameras flashed as he stepped before a cluster of reporters outside the Delgado Holdings headquarters. He wore a dark suit, face set in an expression of forced calm. "I would like to address recent speculations regarding my personal life," he began, voice subdued. "I am currently going through a divorce process, and I request privacy and respect during this challenging time. Delgado Holdings remains strong, and we are fully committed to our ongoing projects. The unfortunate withdrawal of Mr. Nakamura's investment does not diminish our stability." He continued with corporate platitudes, but the reporters clamored for more personal answers. "What about the mistress? Are you engaged already?" one asked. Jacob ignored it, reading from his carefully prepared statement. But the damage was done. In the public's eye, he was the faithless millionaire with something to hide. Watching the coverage from Jennifer's townhouse, Maria felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sorrow. She had loved that man once. Now he was a stranger, fighting to keep illusions intact. But illusions always come at a price. She reminded herself of that truth. As the divorce hearing approached, tension reached a fever pitch. Patrick Hodges received a call from Garrett Rhodes, requesting a private meeting, just the lawyers and their clients, with no media or court officials. Maria and Jennifer drove to the law firm's office, hearts pounding. They were ushered into a sleek conference room. Jacob, Garrett, Patrick, and a stone-faced Annalise were already seated around a polished table. Maria ignored the pang of seeing Annalise by Jacob's side. She focused on the fact that the mistress's presence was highly unusual in a divorce negotiation. Garrett cleared his throat. "We've come with a proposition. Mr. Delgado is prepared to offer a settlement of $100 million plus the Manhattan penthouse in exchange for Miss Delgado signing a non-disclosure agreement, no further revelations about Delgado Holdings or Mr. Delgado's personal affairs. We want to handle this quietly and move on." Maria's eyes flickered. 100 million was vastly larger than the initial offer. She glanced at Patrick, who gave a subtle nod, indicating it was a substantial proposition. Yet something felt off. Her gaze slid to Annalise, who looked uncharacteristically tense. Patrick spoke up. "It's a generous offer, but we need to verify if there are no further conditions. Also, the NDA's scope must be clarified. Miss Delgado has the right to discuss her personal experiences freely." Jacob cut in, voice sharp. "I don't want my ex-wife airing dirty laundry. We sign this. We end it. Maria, you go your way, I go mine." Maria's heart raced. 100 million could secure her future, free her from the stress, and let her start anew. It was a fortune beyond her wildest imagination back when they were newlyweds sharing cheap takeout. But then her gaze settled on Annalise, who avoided eye contact. Maria recalled the shady deals and the knowledge that Delgado Holdings was unraveling behind the scenes. She realized that if she accepted the offer blindly, she might be stepping into a trap, allowing Jacob to cover up potential crimes and injustice. She licked her lips, choosing her words carefully. "Jacob, I appreciate the offer, but I won't sign anything until I'm sure you're not hiding more. I don't need your hush money if it means letting you and Annalise ruin more lives." Anger flashed in Jacob's eyes. "You're letting bitterness cloud your judgment. Think of what 100 million can do for you." Annalise finally spoke, voice hesitant. "Maria, please. There's no need to drag this out. We can all walk away with dignity." Maria almost laughed at the irony of Annalise talking about dignity. Instead, she closed her eyes, remembering the heartbreak of that night at Belafonte's. Then she thought of the fear and manipulation that might still lurk if she let Jacob walk away scot-free. "I'll consider it," she said, "but I'm not making a decision today." Garrett, Jacob's lawyer, looked frustrated. "We need an answer soon. Otherwise, we proceed to court." "Then we proceed to court," Patrick replied calmly. "We'll see you there." The tension was palpable as they stood to leave. Jacob locked eyes with Maria. "Don't do this," he said softly, an echo of the old Jacob appearing for a split second. "We can solve this quietly." She met his gaze, seeing the man she once loved drowned out by layers of betrayal. "If you had wanted things quiet, you wouldn't have proposed to your mistress in a public place." The day of the official court hearing dawned cloudy and brisk. Photographers and reporters crowded the courthouse steps. Maria arrived with Patrick, Jennifer, and a small security detail. Whispers followed her. She was no longer just a betrayed wife, she was the woman who might topple a millionaire's empire. Rumors swirled that she possessed damning evidence of fraud. Jacob and Annalise arrived separately, escorted by their own legal team. People craned their necks to catch a glimpse, cameras clicking furiously. He looked tense, shoulders stiff under his tailored suit. Annalise kept her chin high, though she lingered behind Jacob, as if wary of the scrutiny. Inside the large, wood-paneled courtroom, the judge, a stern woman named Honorable Denise Faraday, called the session to order. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation. On the surface, it was a high-profile divorce, but in reality, it was a battleground for corporate secrets, personal vengeance, and heartbreak. Patrick presented Maria's case with meticulous detail, her contributions to Jacob's early success, The suspicious financial maneuvers uncovered by Daniela and Richard Pine, and the emotional distress caused by Jacob's public betrayal. Garrett rebutted by citing the prenup, painting Maria as vengeful, seeking more than she deserved. Midway through the proceedings, Patrick introduced a surprise witness, Daniela Delgado. She stepped forward, looking poised and determined. Her testimony about Jacob's shell companies, backed by email chains and financial documents, sent waves of shock through the courtroom. The tension climbed higher when she revealed that she had confronted Jacob years ago about money laundering allegations, which he had vehemently denied. When cross-examined by Garrett, Daniela stayed firm. "I have no reason to lie," she said quietly, "other than to expose wrongdoing. My brother has threatened me, but I won't be silent anymore." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Jacob's face was a mask of barely contained fury. For Maria, hearing Daniela stand up for the truth was both validating and heartbreaking. This was the family she once thought she had. Then it was Annalise's turn on the stand. She was visibly nervous, glancing repeatedly at Jacob for reassurance. Under Patrick's probing questions, she admitted to the affair, to Jacob's promises of marriage, but denied any knowledge of financial misconduct. She played the part of the innocent lover, insisting she merely fell in love with a man who claimed he was divorcing his wife. Patrick pressed, "Did Mr. Delgado ever mention, even indirectly, wanting to shift funds out of the country, presumably to protect them from the plaintiff?" Annalise hesitated, swallowing hard. "Not in so many words," she finally said. He mentioned wanting to make sure his money was secure." That small admission sent a ripple through the courtroom. Jacob's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. By the time Annalise stepped down, sweat dotted her brow. She cast a fleeting glance at Jacob, who looked away. After a tense lunch recess, the court reconvened. Garrett strode to the center, a triumphant gleam in his eyes. "Your Honor, we have newly obtained evidence regarding Miss Delgado's own financial history, specifically questionable transactions in her name that raise concerns about her credibility." A hush descended. Maria's heart skipped. She had no idea what they were referring to. She quickly glanced at Patrick, who looked equally puzzled. Jennifer furrowed her brow. Could Jacob's legal team have found something contrived to discredit Maria? Garrett projected documents onto a screen. They showed wire transfers from an account titled M. Delgado to a bank in the Cayman Islands. The amounts were substantial, several $1 million. Maria was dumbfounded. She had never seen those transactions. "This is absurd," Patrick hissed. "Miss Delgado has no knowledge of these accounts. They must be fabricated," but Garrett pressed on. "Nevertheless, these documents indicate that Miss Delgado might have known about offshore practices and even participated in them. We must question her integrity and motivations." Maria's stomach churned. She realized this was a smear tactic, orchestrated to paint her as complicit or hypocritical. But how had they manufactured these records? The judge frowned, calling for order. "Miss Delgado," she addressed Maria, "do you have any knowledge of these transactions?" Maria stood, voice trembling but resolute. "None whatsoever, Your Honor. This is the first I've seen of these so-called documents. I suspect they're part of a scheme by Mr. Delgado to undermine my case." Jacob's eyes flicked toward her. Was there a flicker of regret, or just determination to win at any cost? The judge instructed further examination of the evidence, and recess was called for the day. The media outside went wild, speculating on whether Maria was truly innocent or had skeletons in her closet. That evening, as Maria regrouped with her team, she tried to steady her nerves. Jennifer cursed Jacob's low blow. Patrick immediately launched an investigation into the suspicious documents, suspecting they were forged or manipulated. Meanwhile, Maria's phone buzzed with a text from Richard Pine. "Meet me at my office tomorrow at 7 a.m. I might have found something that can flip this around." Tension thrummed within her. She realized that she was dancing on the edge of a high-stakes game, one where illusions could be crafted and destroyed in an instant. She also sensed that if she didn't play her cards right, she could lose everything. The next morning, Maria arrived at Richard Pine's unremarkable office building in Chelsea. In a modest but tidy workspace, he greeted her with a firm handshake. On his desk, he had a laptop open to a complicated spreadsheet of IP addresses and account details. "I suspected those documents introduced in court were forged," he began without preamble. "So I did a deep dive into the digital metadata of the wire transfers. Every time a wire transfer is done, there's an electronic fingerprint. Long story short, the documents we saw in court have anomalies that suggest they were fabricated." Maria felt a surge of relief but also anger at Jacob's treachery. "So it's definitely fake," Richard nodded. "Yes, and I have proof. The IP addresses associated with these transactions trace back to a shell company that's linked to Delgado Holdings. The digital watermark indicates the documents were created using a specific software license registered to that same shell company. In simpler terms, it was an inside job." Maria exhaled, tension draining from her shoulders. She wanted to hug Richard, but she settled for gripping his arm. "This is exactly what we need. With this, we can prove they tried to frame me." Richard offered a faint smile. "Be careful. Jacob's cornered, and cornered people can be unpredictable. But yes, this should be enough to dismantle their smear campaign." Armed with this new evidence, Maria returned to the courthouse. Patrick introduced Richard Pine's findings, systematically debunking the false documents. The judge was furious at the apparent attempt to mislead the court. Garrett stammered that they'd obtained the documents from an anonymous source and had no knowledge of the forgery. Jacob looked livid, glancing at Annalise, who stared at the floor. The judge sternly reminded all parties that perjury and tampering with evidence carried severe consequences. In a decisive moment, she ordered a full forensic audit of Delgado Holdings' accounts. That spelled disaster for Jacob, who had spent years carefully disguising questionable dealings. It was the final straw that cracked his empire's shell wide open. When the courtroom resumed, Maria's legal team presented ironclad evidence that the so-called Cayman Islands bank statements in her name were forged. Metadata traced them back to a shell company tied to Delgado Holdings, proving Jacob's team had fabricated documents to discredit her. Furious at the deception, the judge ordered a comprehensive forensic audit of all Delgado Holdings accounts. Within days, the company's stock nosedived as investors panicked, and board members blamed Jacob for the ensuing scandal. Facing mounting pressure, they forced him to step down as CEO, leaving him humiliated and struggling to salvage his reputation. Simultaneously, Maria's divorce proceedings reached a turning point. Recognizing he was cornered by the damning audit and under threat of a potential criminal investigation, Jacob instructed his lawyer to extend a vastly improved settlement offer. Instead of the nominal amounts initially proposed, Maria now stood to receive $200 million, a portfolio of properties including the Manhattan penthouse, and an official acknowledgement of Jacob's wrongdoing. Crucially, the settlement would also include his public apology for using forged evidence against her. Desperate to minimize further legal liabilities and public shame, Jacob surrendered to every condition, though he seethed at the outcome. On the day the final documents were signed, Jacob approached Maria in the courthouse hallway, offering a halting apology that acknowledged his betrayal and, beneath that, his regret at how spectacularly he had destroyed their shared dreams. Maria accepted his words without malice, though the bond they'd once shared was irrevocably severed. Annalise Winslow did not appear. Rumors suggested she was already planning her exit, unwilling to remain at Jacob's side now that his empire was in shambles. With the divorce finalized, Maria stepped away from the chaos. Though she walked away with more money than she'd ever imagined, she remained grounded by the values her parents had instilled in her. Resolving to use her resources for good, she founded an organization to assist women rebuilding their lives after betrayal, separation, or financial struggles. Daniela, Jacob's sister, became a staunch supporter. Together, they furnished the charity's new office, forging a friendship born of mutual respect rather than shared loyalty to Jacob. Jacob's fall from grace served as a cautionary tale in Manhattan's elite circles, a parable of unchecked ambition leading to ruin. Free from his shadow, Maria embraced her next chapter on her own terms, moving into a modern penthouse across town, a space she chose herself. Not out of obligation, she felt a renewed sense of hope. Gazing at the skyline one late afternoon, she allowed the crisp air to fill her lungs, contemplating the journey that had challenged her faith in love and trust. Yet, in rising from the rubble, Maria discovered a powerful truth. Broken dreams could serve as the foundation for a more genuine, self-determined future. In the end, she transformed a devastating betrayal into an unbreakable will, resolved to live fully and authentically. Her story an enduring testament to resilience and renewal. And there you have it, the twists and turns of Maria Delgado's remarkable journey from unsuspecting wife to triumphant phoenix. She discovered the power of self-reinvention in the face of heartbreak and high-stakes drama, proving that even the deepest betrayals can ignite a fierce determination to rise. Jacob Delgado's downfall and Annalise Winslow's vanishing act became cautionary tales whispered throughout Manhattan's elite circles, while Maria's name was etched into the city's lore as a resilient survivor who refused to back down. She built a new life that honored her past but never allowed it to define her future. If you've been hooked by this tale of scandal, reinvention, and triumph, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Help us spread the inspiration and let others know that even in the darkest moments, there's always a chance to step into the light stronger than ever. Together, we can celebrate stories of courage, resilience, and personal victory.